To install the Ultra Distributor client, you're going to go to the URL for the Ultra Distributor server. So I'm just going to use the Demo 1 account. Demo 1 is the password. You click Login. It's going to prompt me to run the installer. I'm going to click Install. It'll download the install files. Do click once, and then you'll get a box to ask you for a new user for the UI. This user for the UI is required for the encryption in the local file system. So I'm just going to keep it simple. I always just tell customers use the same username and password that you use for Distributor. And then you just have to confirm the password one time. And then in here, just indicate what you want to call the site for which you're setting this up. I'm just going to call it ProScan. If you want, you can click Test Connection. And you don't have to set this stuff at the bottom. I'm going to skip that for now. You could set it up in the initial install and just click Finish, or you can set it up now. But I'll show you how to get to this after you do the install. So when you click on Finish, you're going to get the Distributor UI. And if you want to go in and change those settings later on, you're going to go into Configuration, so File Configuration. This is where you'll set up routing rules. So for example, you can have it automatically forward DICOM. So if the Distributor client receives DICOM from the cloud, it can automatically forward it to a DICOM node on the local network. And likewise, you can set it up to automatically route HL7 to a node on the local network that it receives from the cloud. So that's where you go for setting that stuff up. But if you go to Modify Account Setup, because I called it ProScan on the initial setup, it shows up as ProScan. If the user forgets to put the name in, it still shows here. It just doesn't have a label. You'll just click on Modify Account Setup, and it'll just have a little, just have like a little box with nothing written in it. But this one says ProScan. So now I could go back in here and I can set up the listening ports. I'm going to set up HL7 to listen on 9000 and forward to Demo 2. Of course, in production, you might have it just say forward to cloud, for example, or forward to whatever the name of your company is, just so that it's easy for people to understand who they're forwarding it to. So I'm just going to set the folders here. So it's going to be HL7. I'll set up DICOM on port 4444 just to make sure I'm not overlapping with something else listening on DICOM on here. And that's it. So now this will be set up. I can always just hit Test Connection, but sometimes when you do that, when you hit Finish, on workstations usually, it'll pop up and ask if you want to allow that port on the firewall. So you can certainly do that. If it comes up, hit Yes. And that's it. So at this point, the client is configured, and you should be able to send HL7 to it and also send DICOM. On this server, I have the Ultra HL7 send utility. So this is just the utility you can use to test sending HL7 into the Distributor client. So I'm going to click on it. It's going to ask me for an IP address and a port number, which I already have set up. So I'm going to set it to port 9000, which is what we had configured. And I've just got a few test messages on here. So I just put a few test HL7 messages. So I'll go ahead and send that. So it'll attempt to send the message. You do have to hit disconnect. So you hit send and disconnect to close the connection. And I'll bring this back up, and you can see it received the message. So it sent the message through. You could also send DICOM. So I'm just going to try to send it using Store SCU, which is just a free Office tool for sending DICOM. And I've got a bunch of DICOM files just sitting in this folder. It's actually two different studies, but a bunch of different files. So I'm just going to try to send it to port 4444 on this machine. And let's see, so it got a failure here. So the Store SCU only sends with ILE by default, so I have to add a switch in here for JPEG 2000. I think it's -XV. Let's see if that works. There we go. So it sent the images. So now if I come back over to this client, it's going to take a second for it to post it to the server, and then once the job is complete, it shows it in here as completed. So once it's done, it shows up in the list here. You can see the images. It just shows you a copy of the images. But once you see it in this list, it has successfully made it to the server. And at that point on the server, it could route with traditional DICOM into a PAX or what have you downstream.